No one will hire you. So what now? It's an unfortunately common trend that I'm seeing in big tech on the daily, where you have these cracked new grads with good marks, good internships, decent experience, who aren't getting any callbacks or interviews, and they're sending out thousands of applications. So what can you do in this environment? Well, I'm going to explore 10 concrete actions you can take in this video. Number one, have someone who knows what they're doing look over your resume. Ideally, someone in the industry, but it can also just be someone experienced who's worked a bit longer or who's been in a position to review resumes. The one thing I'll say is that I'm seeing more and more new grads and interns embellish points on their resumes that simply don't make sense. Don't say that you led a multi-million-dollar project when you were an intern. Don't say that you improved efficiency by 100% on a massive global project. It just doesn't sound realistic or like something an intern would actually do. So make sure your resume is grounded in reality. That can actually make you stand out a bit more these days. Number two, focus on new grad roles or roles where you actually match the skills listed in the job posting. I'm seeing a lot of new grads maybe think that they kind of expect a higher paying job.
This job, I deserve it.
And they'll apply for them. But I strongly recommend you actually specifically seek out the new grad roles because you'll be in a much better position to get an interview or get a callback there compared to a position that needs 5 years of experience, for example. The other thing I'll say is don't apply to a job where it has very specific skills in something like Rust, that, language that you've never dealt with before. Because even if you do get past that first phone screen, you're going to kind of be like a fish out of water in the interview. And I strongly recommend you only apply to things that you actually have experience in, whether that's Python as a new grad or Java or C. Focus on those kind of roles where you actually match the job skills. Number three, make your search national or even international. Don't limit it to just the city where you are right now. And I know this can be scary. I personally moved internationally after university for a job opportunity that came up because in my country, Canada, there's just a fewer number of tech jobs than internationally or in the States. And I think a lot of people don't kind of recognize that point, or maybe there's a bit of fear of the unknown. But the thing you've got to remind yourself is you can work at one of those jobs for a couple of years, get the experience under your belt until you get to kind of a mid-level, and then always move home. I personally worked in the States for multiple years and then ended up moving back to Canada. And I think that really set up my career nicely. I had an easier time getting a more prestigious job out of school than I would have if I just limited myself to my city here. So be open to being a little bit flexible with location, especially with the recent pushes to return to office that we've seen big companies like Amazon and Microsoft have. The days of easy, plentiful remote jobs from 2019 till around 2024 seem to be going away, unfortunately. Number four, be open to non-work from home jobs. As mentioned in the last point, return to office is becoming more and more of the norm at tech companies these days, for better or for worse. And as a new grad, the reality is you are at the lowest point of the totem pole and you haven't really built up that experience or that domain reputation to allow yourself to fully work from home. There are still those jobs out there, but they're a lot more difficult to get and they have a lot more competition. So by avoiding them, you can give yourself a leg up. Number five, be open to both known employers and those you've never heard of, including those whose primary business has nothing to do with tech. The reality is there's tons of companies out there that make products, create revenue that don't specialize in the tech itself, but in services and things around that. And those can be very stable jobs. We're talking about things like government positions, insurance, manufacturing, things you wouldn't necessarily think are tech, but they almost certainly have tech stacks and tech products where they need technical software people to work on. And sometimes those requirements can be a little bit less stringent than a pure big tech company like Google. I highly recommend you keep an eye out for maybe the less sexy industries, but the stable ones that have been around for years and years. Number six, be open to contract and contract for hire work. This can be a great way to get your foot in the door. Maybe there's a contract position for a little software gig for 6 months or 8 months. You can build up rapport, you can build relationships. If anything, it's a stepping stone that you can continue doing job searching while you have that one contract job. The other thing that I'll say that's kind of tangential to this point is you can look out for contract positions that aren't pure software engineering, but maybe they're more project management roles or product management roles, or they're kind of tech adjacent. That can also be a great way to get your foot in the door while you continue looking for that software engineering position that you want. Number seven is don't price yourself out of a job. Be willing to accept either at the market pay or even lower than market pay for your first new grad position. Again, I have to remind people that this isn't set in stone. There were days when you could easily make 80K out of school, 90K. It seems like that's been dwindling a little bit recently from the trends that I've seen, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't accept a job that's only paying 50 or 60K. A job like that is definitely worth it to start off with. And again, you can use it as a stepping stone, you can use it to gather experience, and you can use it to get to that next level. So try not to be too picky. A job in the hand is worth two in the bush. Number eight, When you apply, if there is an opportunity to include a personal message, try to include a short one that, says something about yourself or the specific job that you're applying for. I know with the rise of, generative AI and LLMs, cover letters are less of a useful thing as a hiring manager. But if you genuinely put in a little bit of thought, it doesn't have to be long, just a couple of sentences, and you kind of explain, who you are, why you want the job, why you think you'd be a good fit, that can sometimes set you apart for these jobs that are getting thousands of resumes thrown at them. Number 9. Consider working with a recruiter or a headhunter. Now, I haven't personally worked with a headhunter, so I can't speak to how well this works, but I have heard of friends who've had success after long job searches where they weren't able to get anything, where a headhunter was able to find them some kind of role. There's also a really good technique that I personally have used to get jobs. This is how I actually got my job at Microsoft. One of my first jobs was reaching out to the recruiter directly on LinkedIn. If you find a job posting or a hiring manager on LinkedIn, and you're probably savvy enough to do that if you're working in software and tech, you can reach out to them, you can connect with them. There's no law against that, and you can kind of genuinely make a meaningful connection and say, hey, I'm a new grad, if there's any opportunities you think I'd be a good fit for, if you take a look at my profile, let me know, and either way, happy to connect. You can write a simple message like that. And for me, that actually led to an interview at Microsoft for a product management position. I probably never would have gotten past the screening if I didn't take that initiative to kind of seek out the recruiter for that role, figure out who it was, send them a message, come across not too needy or not too aggressive. It really worked. And I think if I had to look for another role today, I'd probably use that technique of looking out for recruiters or hiring managers on LinkedIn to make that more personal connection. The reality is there's so many automated systems nowadays that even referrals have a difficult time of getting through all the screening processes. Number 10, see if you can network to get an interview somewhere. You've probably got friends from college who have jobs, friends from high school, your parents or friends of your parents, friends of your family. There's no shame in this. If you're desperate and you're looking for something, people will say, oh, nepotism. But the reality is that's how a lot of people get their start or their first job, finding a connection. And maybe it's a local job or an industry that you haven't heard of. But if you can get your foot in the door and get that first interview, there's a very high chance of getting to the next levels. So don't be afraid to leverage your network. Reach out to your friends, see if they have tips and advice. How did they get their jobs? Reach out to, old faculty members. Maybe there's positions at your university, little research jobs or TA jobs that you can do to bridge the gap. I'd highly recommend, using your network. It's uncomfortable for us nerds and us tech people to do networking, but it is the way the business world works. I'll also mention that the unfortunate reality nowadays is that if you've graduated recently, let's say in the past 2 to 4 years, it's really become a numbers game to get your foot in the door for that first job. It's not uncommon for new grads to say that they've had to send out 1,000 or 2,000 applications before they find that first position. Gone are the days where you can just send out 50 or 100 applications and have a choice of a few offers. The reality now is that you really need to blast out and maximize as many applications as you possibly can to really make the numbers work for you. The last thing I'll say is that if you're either a new grad in CS right now or getting an engineering degree or one who's recently graduated and can't find a job, don't beat yourself up. It's a crappy market in general, and the reality is that tech is always a cyclical industry. I've seen boom and busts over my 10 years in the industry. I've talked to family members who've been in the industry for 30 to 40 years. They've seen multiple booms and busts. And the reality is it's just a hard time right now to find a job or switch jobs. And at some point it won't be a hard time and it'll change pretty quickly. So if you can't get a job in tech right now, there's no shame in getting another job in a different industry or unrelated to kind of wait it out until there are better things on the horizon. So don't beat yourself up. Keep working hard. Keep increasing your resume, studying for high marks if you're in school. Tides will turn at some point, just a matter of how long, and tech always rebounds. So I don't think that's ever going to change. Hope this helped, and talk to you later.